Okay, so this is the notes and the examples for frequency distribution and charts. The PowerPoint in that video does the definitions, and so this is actually problems. So your homework for this week, you're going to make a frequency distribution. You won't actually have to graph any charts. That's going to be in a couple weeks. But since the topic covers everything together, because it does histograms and different charts in this section, I have the examples on all together in this section. So we have listed below are some Disney movies along with their lengths in minutes. So these are just randomly selected Disney movies with their length in minutes, and it says of the movies listed, which is the longest. So you have to go through and find the maximum length or time that the movie runs, which I have done. So the maximum here is Mary Poppins 139. And then it says of the movies listed, which is the shortest. So then you have to go through and find the minimum time, which is over here 58, where the toys come from. And you need that because in order to make the frequency distribution, you have to know the maximum and the minimum. So that's the point in the question. So you can go through and find the maximum and the minimum. So what we want to do is create a frequency distribution consisting of 5 classes. So in order to do that, you have to calculate the class width, which I'll do here. So the class width is the maximum, which we said was 139, minus the minimum, which was 58, divided by your number of classes. So it tells you to use 5 classes, so that number is always going to be given to you. It's going to tell you how many classes to use. And if you do 139 minus 58 and then divide that by 5, you'll get 16.2. The thing is, though, for class width, you always must round up. It doesn't matter if it follows the rules of rounding or not. Everybody seems to remember if it's 16, if it was 16.5 or higher, it would round up, but even 16.2, you still round up. So you would actually use 17. So class width, remember, always round up. So then you come up with your classes. The easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is to start at the minimum. So that's what I always do. I just start out at the minimum. So our first lower class limit here is 58. And then remember your class width, a lot of people think it's this number, the lower class limit, to the top number, the upper class limit, but it's not. It actually goes down between consecutive lower class limits. So you don't have to draw this on your paper, but just so you can see, I'll do it here. So plus 17 to get to the next lower class limit, which is 75. Plus 17 will be 92. And then 109, and then finally 126. Oops, I'm going to drop plus 17 there. 126 here. So the class width goes down. So once you have all your lower class limits, you get your upper class limits by either using, you can use 58 plus 16, or the easiest thing to do is just subtract 1. So if this is 75, this is 74. This is 92, this is 91. It's easier to subtract 1 than add 16 normally. So then this would be 108, this would be 125. Here you'd have to add 16 going this way, or you can go 17 and then subtract 1, however you want to think about it. Let me just put plus 16 here. That's the class width, not rounded up, to get from the lower limit to the upper limit. So there's your classes if you ignore this over here. So when you do this, you can just write this down. You don't have to necessarily write plus unless it helps you. And then for frequency, you go through and you count how many movie lengths are in each class. And I hope I didn't miscount on this. I did it a few minutes ago just to make sure I had the right numbers. So if you look here, what I did when I counted, I marked them. So between 58 and 74, I did a dash over on this side. which are these. And then for the next one, 75 to 91, I think I did a dot or something. So however you want to do it, some people color code it, just if you have a big list of numbers, because it's kind of hard to do. But go through, count numbers in each class. You should get 4, 11, 13, 3, and then 1. So I'm not going to go through and count them again. You can go through and count and check. Then for the midpoints of the movie lengths, to find the midpoints between new numbers, you add them together and divide by 2. So you do 58 plus 74 divided by 2 would give you 66. 75 plus 91 divided by 2 would give you 83. This is also going to be a 17 jump because your class width is 17, so you should be able to add 17 all the way down through here once you do 1. 92 plus 108 divided by 2 is 100. 109 plus 125 divided by 2 is 117, and then 126 plus 142 divided by 2 is 134. And then for your relative frequencies, so these can be, if it says percentage frequency, you want to switch to percent. If it says relative frequency, usually we just do 2 decimal places. You can do fractions, but normally we just do 2 decimal places. So in order to do the relative frequency, you have to know how many total numbers you have. So there's 32 up here total, which I should have mentioned on the frequency. You can check if you counted all your numbers. If you add up all these, it gets to 32, so you didn't miss any. Hopefully you didn't count one twice or something. So to do the relative frequency, you take your frequency divided by the total number you have, which is 32. So 4 divided by 32. And we're going to round it to 2 decimal places. So this would be 0.13. 11 divided by 32 for the next one will be 0.34. 13 divided by 32 for the next one would be 0.41. 3 divided by 32 would be 0.09, and 1 divided by 32 would be 0.03. And you can check these as well. If you add them up, they should come out to 1, or if their percentages 100%. Sometimes when we round, it'll be 0.99 or 1.01, which is okay, because if you round, some numbers don't round nicely. These actually do. If you add these up, you get 1, which is what you prefer to happen. So that's your relative frequency. And like I said, if it said percentage frequency, we would just switch it to 13%, 34%, 41%, 9%, and 3%. And you can sometimes do fractions, but most of the time I ask for just 2 decimal places. And then the last column here is your cumulative frequency, which is a running total of your frequencies. So our first frequency starts us off, which is 4. And then we go the next one, so cumulative, we're adding them together. So the next one's 11. So 4 plus 11 gives us 15. When you get to the end, it should give you the total number that you had to start with. So the next class, you have 13. So you do 4 plus 11 plus 13, or you can say 15 plus 13, however you want to think about that. And then the next one's 3, so you add up all these, 4, 11, 13, and 3, which gives you 31. The last one's 1, so you get 32 total, which is how many movies we had. So that is the frequency distribution for those movies. So on your homework for this week, you're basically going to be doing this page, except it uses the top 20 movies, I think, as of maybe Thursday. Or September 15th, I think is when I looked at it, because they update the charts every day if anything changes. So you're going to do 20 movies, the top 20 movies for North America of all time. So if you have any questions on that, just let me know, but this is a good example to follow. You'll be doing the same sort of thing. So the next page says to draw a histogram of the data using the frequency column. So, let's see if I can put both of them up here. somehow. Do it this way. So when you actually draw graphs, some people are comfortable drawing graphs in Excel, which is perfectly fine. If you know how to make graphs in Excel, you can. But I'm fine with you drawing them by hand. I don't draw very well, so I'm not going to grade you on is your line straight and that sort of thing. As long as you have everything labeled and it looks remotely like it's supposed to, it's fine. So if you're an artist and you like using rulers and stuff, then that's fine too, but I don't do that, so mine usually don't look the greatest. So to do your graphs, anytime you do a graph, you always want to title it. So I'm not very creative on the titles. I just used length of some Disney movies, since that's what we did. And then we have, generally in this class, you're only ever going to need the first quadrant. Oh, I should have moved it up a little bit so I had room to write down here below it. That's okay. So your y-axis here is going to be your frequency. And we go 4, 11, 13, 3, and 1. So I think I did 5, 10, 15. Like I should have moved that up a little bit, but that's okay. And then your x-axis is always your length in minutes, which is your classes. And if you listen to the PowerPoint, it says you can label them using your class midpoints and or your class boundaries and different things. The easiest thing to do is just to use your classes, which is generally what I do. Just because if you label them any other way, people sometimes get confused. So our first class frequency is 4. So you draw, it's basically you're making a bar graph. So you go up to 4, which is about there. And like I said, these do not have to be perfect. So that's your first class, which is 58 to 74. Your next class is 11, frequency is 11, so we want to go up to a little bit above 10. Your next class is 13, so we're going to go up to maybe about right there. And this is where if you really want to do a ruler and stuff, then that's perfectly fine, but as long as you get the idea and it looks like it's supposed to, I'm fine. Oh shoot, I'm not supposed to do spaces. I got ahead of myself. Histograms don't have gaps. These bars are supposed to connect. Let me flip it over and do it on the back side. I'm sorry. Try again. So a bar graph has spaces, but a histogram actually doesn't have spaces, so you're supposed to touch the bars together. Okay, so let me try this again. So 4, and that's 58 to 74. And then the next bar goes up to 11. This looks better. Then the next bar goes up to 13. They're supposed to have equal width as well. But if you freehand it, you know, sometimes it's hard to make them equal, but you do as close as you can. Then the next one, 109 to 125, is 3. And then finally, you've got 1. So that's actually the histogram, because remember for it, like I forgot for just a minute, you are not supposed to have any gaps between your bars. So it's supposed to, the bars are supposed to be connected together for your histogram. So sorry about that. I was just trying to draw my bars. So to make the histogram, just use your frequency. You can also use relative frequencies to make a histogram, or percentage frequencies. Generally, we'll just use frequency unless it asks you for a relative frequency histogram, but most of the time frequency is what most people do because it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so let me cross this out. No gaps. So for the next problem, Ashley attended Virginia Tech for her undergraduate and Master's of Education degree. Listed below are the points scored per game by the Hokies during the 2013 football season. Some of these problems are kind of older data, but you know, for statistics, you just need data sets, and you can go through and update them every year if you want to, but for examples, their problems are done the same, so I didn't change this one. 2013 is fine. So you want to make a stem and leaf plot to display this data. So in order to make a stem and leaf plot, you don't have to do this, but generally I will put the numbers in order first. So the smallest number is 10. So I'll go over here on the side and write the numbers in order. And then the next number is 12. And then we've got 15, then 16, 17. I just think it's easier to just go ahead and put them in order to begin with rather than try to do it when you are actually making your stem plot. Then we've got 24. And then 2 27s. And then 29, I think. Yeah, where'd it go? There's 29. And 42 and 45. Is that all of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, that's all. So there's your numbers in order, smallest to largest. So we want to make a stem plot or a stem and leaf plot. And again, you always want to make sure you title and use your legend. So this is points scored by the Hokies per game in 2013. So we're going to make our stem. And then our leaf. So the stem is always your tens place, or if you're 3-digit, 4-digit numbers, whatever, you keep adding on, so it can be your hundreds or whatever, in case there is. So this is just 2-digit numbers, so we're going to use our tens place. So we've got a 1, a 2. There are no 30s, so some books will leave it out. Some books will tell you to write 3. So I usually just write it just so it's not skipping a number, because if I skip a number it kind of bothers me. And then 4. So for the leaf, we use our ones place always. So we've got 2 10s, so we do 0, 0, and there's no commas to separate these. Don't put commas in your stem plot, it makes it too junked up. And then we've got 2, 5, 6, 7, and 9, all for ones. Or teens, I should say, I guess. Then for our 20s, we've got a 4, a 7, 7, and a 9. And then there's no 30s, so just skip it. And then 40s, we've got a 2 and a 5. And so there's your stem plot, and you always need a legend for your stem plot so that if somebody's looking at it and they don't know what they're looking at, they can understand what the numbers mean. So you can pick any of these numbers, it doesn't matter which one. I picked 2-7 or 2-7 is equal to 27. So there's your legend. So it's important on graphs to not forget titles and labels and legends, just because if somebody's looking at a graph or a chart or whatever kind of display, you want them to be able to easily read what they're looking at, not try to have to decipher it. So we've got just a couple more graphs here. So this one deals with UT. They've had several preseason rankings from 2002 to 2007. these years it kind of jumped around a whole bunch, so that makes it make a good chart. You want to create a time series chart to display the data. So time series chart is basically just a line graph over time. So what we want to do is, again, title your graph. So I'm going to call it the Tennessee Vols AP Poll Preseason Ranking 2002 to 2007. And again, we only need the first quadrant. Let me leave a little bit of room to write underneath this. Okay, so your year always goes on the x-axis, so this is year. And then your whatever you're talking about goes on the y-axis, so in this case our rank. So our rank goes from 3 to 23. So I went by 5s up to 25. So I said, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And then our year on the bottom, so we have 2002. So this is, let's see if I can write it small enough, 2002. The rank is 5, so you go above 2002 up to 5 and put a dot. And then we go over to 2003. The rank is 12, so we go above 2003 and go up to 12, which is maybe about right there. 2004, it's 14. So we go up to 14. 2005, it's 3. 2006, it's 23. Let's see. Usually can't do this very straight. 23 is about right, maybe there. And then 2007, we have 15. We go up to 15, which is about maybe right there. So like I said, on these, they don't have to be perfect, just as long as you understand the concept and it's a line graph. So once you have these points, you connect them all with a line. So we do lines from each point, and then the next thing is go down. Oops, I missed. And if I miss, I usually just make my dot bigger. So that's what I'm saying is you don't have to draw these perfectly. So that would be the time series graph, and we have it all labeled. So that's that one. Number 4 wants you to do a dot plot for the ages of students in a college math course. So again, you need to give it a title. So ages of students, I don't know what college math course, just some college math course. And a dot plot, you basically just draw a number line. And you need to know what values to start at. So if you look on here, the minimum number, the minimum age, I guess, is 18, and the highest is 42. So the max is 42. So we need to go from 18 to 42. So I did 15. I started at 15, and then there's 20. For a dot plot, you probably want to tick it all off. Sorry, I can't talk and count at the same time, apparently. So for the dot plot, most of the time, like when I do up here, I don't tick it all off, but for a dot plot, because you're going to put a dot above each number, makes it a little bit easier if you do individual tick marks. If it's a huge range, then I probably wouldn't fool, but this one's not that bad. So this is the age in years. So then you just go through and you put a dot everywhere you have a number. If you do the number more than one time, you just stack the dots on top of each other. So here we start with 18, so we go 15, 16, 17, 18. Above 18, stick a dot. Then I usually cross them out as I go. Then we got 19, 20, 18 again, so go back to 18, put one on top of the other. 35, 26, 18 again, so we go put another dot on top. 21, 20 again, so put another dot on top. So you just keep stacking until you're done, if you hit the number more than once. 24, 38, 36, 37, 38. 18 again, 24, 21, 22, 18 again, 19 again, 42, 27, 26, 27, and then 19 again. And so that is your dot plot. So next week we're going to talk about mean, median, mode, and all that stuff. So the dot plot shows you the mode really easily because it's where your most dots are. So our mode would be 18. So when we talk about that next week, the dot plot shows you that pretty quickly. So that's all you have to do for a dot plot. Just put a dot above each number, and if you get it more than once, just keep stacking them. So for our last one here, we have listed in the table below are some types of food sold at a local fair and the frequency of each type that was bought. And it wants you to create a Pareto chart for the data. And so for a Pareto chart, it is a bar graph that goes from the largest to the smallest. A Pareto chart can have gaps, just the histogram is the only one that can't have the gaps. So Pareto chart is just a bar graph that goes from largest to smallest. So usually what I do is I write my numbers largest to smallest. So if we look, we have 186, then 124, then 64, then 48, then 38, then 34. So we have hot dogs, then hamburgers, then funnel cakes, caramel apples, cotton candy, and kettle corn is the order we need to go to make a Pareto chart, because we have to go largest to smallest. So to draw this graph, I'm just going to call it food sold at fair. And we need to go from 34 to 186. So I went up to 200 and counted by 50s. So 200, 150, 100, 50. So this is the frequency, or the number of times it was sold. And for your y-axis, and your x-axis is the qualitative portion, the type of food. So we're just going to make a bar graph. So we start off with the highest, which was hot dogs at 186, which is maybe about right there. So that's hot dog. Hamburgers, 124. So hamburger. Funnel cake is 64. And then caramel apple at 48. We go almost to 50. Then 38 for cotton candy. And then finally, kettle corn. Kettle corn for 34. And so that is our Pareto chart. Like I said, it's okay if it has gaps. It's just a bar graph. And just remember, for Pareto, though, you always have to go largest to smallest. So that's all the examples. So you'll see some of these charts again in a couple weeks. You're going to do a movie thing where you're actually going to have to draw some of these charts. For this week, bigger focus will be on being able to fill this out. So please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help however I can.